We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
We may share the same political ideologies. We may even share the same religious beliefs. We both could have a matching Grateful Dead tattoo, yet if our values do not align, then there isn't any fertile soil in which a relationship can grow. Plain and simple. Especially when it comes to our intimate relationships. This is why I wanted to invite Jack Delosa on the podcast. Now, Jack has more business accomplishments to his name than I think many of us could achieve in a single lifetime. But we're not going to talk about that today. Instead, we're going to talk about why it is so vitally important to have shared values with someone we choose to spend the rest of our lives with. Because when you do, it's like strapping a rocket ship to your back, because vision, goals, simple actions, and how we show up each day in the relationship becomes so clear. So you're going to get that and more today. This is the Mankind Podcast. G'day and welcome to another live recording of the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove there's more than one way to be a man. And today we are joined by Jack Delosa. Now, Jack is the founder and CEO of Australia's largest business coaching and growth agency, The Entourage, which I am a proud alumni. Now, with a global community of nearly 1 million business owners, it was named the 4th best place to work in Australia. Now, along with writing 3 best-selling books, Jack was recognised as being one of Australia's top entrepreneurs and investors, listed in the Australian Financial Review Young Rich list 5 times. But as much fun as we can talk about business, Jack joins us today to talk about how his personal and family values make all of this success possible. Jack Delosa, mate, welcome to the Mankind Podcast.
Brandon, thanks so much for having me, man. Really good to be here. I love what you guys are doing with Mankind.
Yeah, no, mate, absolutely. It's what we do. It's what we do. And how cool, man. Worlds collide. I've been a longtime friend of your now wife, Amanda. Panda, as she's known out there. And so what a cool connection here.
100%, man. It's a small world. Yeah, you've been through the Entourage journey, best friends with Panda, as we were chatting about beforehand. It seems like everyone on the planet knows Panda and loves pandas. So here we are intersecting.
Here we are. And hopefully, not the last time, mate. This will be certainly an until
Absolutely.
Next time. Now, as much as the accolades and accomplishments you've enjoyed in business, no doubt, I'm sure bring you a good sense of pride. I know that does not even come close to the pride I've witnessed in you as a husband to Panda and as a father to Ariella. So, mate, how does the title of husband and dad feel amongst many of the other titles and hats that you've worn?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me, they are the titles that are the most important and they come first. To be honest, they make every other title almost irrelevant in that, I think when you enter into a really values-aligned relationship with somebody that you have a lot of love and deep respect for, when you have a young family, one of the things that it helps to do is it helps to sharpen your focus and really crystallize your priorities. I think particularly as men, before we start having a family, for me at least, my journey was business and maybe a little bit of fitness. And that was pretty much it. I was like entirely mission-driven. And so I was very monomaniacal. I was very focused, and in some ways one-dimensional. Although I think that's okay prior to being in a relationship and having kids, right? In fact, I probably encourage it. However, since jumping into a relationship with Panda and subsequently having Ariella, I suppose in some ways I'm a lot more commercial. In that, in business. I've been in business for almost 20 years now, and I was always just doing it for the fun of it, for the thrill of it, for the enjoyment of it, for the challenge of it, right? And now I'm approaching it with a slightly more commercial angle. It's not to say that my heart's gone out of it. If anything, my heart has actually increased in my mission sort of pillar as well. But I'm a lot more commercial. I'm a lot more focused, and I'm a lot more clear on what I need to do.
What do you mean by commercial?
Honestly, I mean, in this instance, I mean financial. And so prior to Panda and Ariella, I've never been someone that's been driven by money. And if there's been seasons in my life, business, Richard Branson talks about this. He said cash comes in waves. One season when you're an entrepreneur, probably for anybody, but one season you'll have lots of cash, then you'll have no cash, then you'll have and so throughout my life, in the seasons where I've had access to a lot of cash flow, I've literally kind of had this underlying thought like, what do I need this for? Like what am I going to do? I loved where I lived. I loved where I worked. I loved the car that I drove. I loved my, so while it was and still is, a goal of mine to build wealth and increase wealth, and I think that's a really healthy goal for everybody to have, men and women. There were times where I didn't really have much of a purpose for the money side of things, whereas now I do. It's like I just want to provide them safety, security, lifestyle, every opportunity that I can. And so I'm more focused on the bottom line now. And counterintuitively, that actually makes for a better business because, there's been studies done on this. The businesses that actually pay dividends, and I mean, I've been paying dividends for 10 years. It's not like I've just started paying dividends, but the businesses that pay dividends are actually more successful than those that choose not to. And you'd almost think that it would be the other way around, in that the businesses that choose to reinvest everything ultimately become more successful. That's actually not true. And my hypothesis around why businesses that pay dividends are ultimately better businesses is because the owner or owners become more financially focused. So that's what I mean by more commercial.
Got it. That speaks a lot to my experience. When I met my wife, I was doing van life with the dog out west around the States.
And probably ecstatic to do that, right?
Oh, having a blast. But when I met Christine, it was like, oh, whoa, okay, this is throwing a bit of a wrench in the plans. And I say this to a lot of people that perhaps are getting into relationships or wondering, like, is there person or people out there? Is the two things I can reflect is even though there are tough times, the choice to pursue this person or be with this person is an absolute no-brainer. And along with that, everything becomes more clear. Everything. To what I do in the mornings, how I end my evenings, to the why behind certain decision-making. A lot of previous yeses have become hell no's. And like way more because this time is precious. It's valuable. Resources 100%. Get allocated in different ways because you have this person or these people that you're building a vision and a future with together. So
100%.
It sounds like that's much in alignment to the commercial side of what you're talking about. Is everything has far more meaning behind it.
100%. And I think the point you make around saying no to more things is definitely true in my instance as well. As I said, I've always been pretty focused and pretty kind of with, living with the blinkers on. But that's even more true now, and I hear a lot of fathers talk about this. If something's going to take me away from family time, then it has to have a very clear purpose and almost high ROI. And that ROI might be emotional ROI or a health and fitness ROI. It's not necessarily financial. But there better be a purpose if something's going to take me away from spending time with my family, right? Because you learn what's really important. And there's nothing more enjoyable than spending time with your family.
Yeah. Here. Now, you have spent a bit of time in the public eye in your professional life, quite a young, quick start in the entrepreneurial space. I imagine with that lifestyle, even though you've been able to put the blinkers on and stay pretty focused, I imagine throughout that journey, there was no shortage of options for potential mates, potential life partners that you were going to choose to spend your life with going forward. So I want to ask you, what were the kind of inherent challenges you experienced in finding the right person that you want to spend the rest of your life with when you were investing so much time in your professional world?
I think it's always one's self, right? And so they say you don't have relationship patterns, you've got childhood patterns that are playing out in relationships. And so for me, I'm an impulsive person. I'm an all or nothing person. And so my relationship pattern was I would rush in. And often that would mean rushing in based on, immediate emotional intoxication as opposed to thought through and legitimate compatibility. And so my pattern in relationships was, I'd find myself a couple of years in, and discover with my then partner that we weren't necessarily compatible and didn't want to live life in a similar way and didn't want the same things out of life. And then I'd go and do it again. And so when I came out of my previous relationship, it was like I'd kind of done that 3 times over the course of 10 years, let's say.
Sure.
And, I'm a big believer in self-accountability, self-responsibility. Like if there's a pattern in your life, there's probably only one common denominator to that pattern, and it's you, right? So after the 3rd time around, Jack, you don't know what you do. Like it's obviously unconscious because you're not seeing it, but clearly you're doing something or not doing something to set yourself up for a lack of longevity or failure, in this pattern. And so I needed to get clear on what it was. And so I started to do relationship coaching, relationship therapy, and that kind of led me to doing some inner child work. And it was really interesting to me when you start to kind of scratch the surface on that sort of stuff, just how much you experience and learn, that just how much of what went on in childhood is pulling the strings of our patterns and our compulsions and our behaviors and our communications today.
Yeah.
And when I went into inner child work, I thought, okay, this is going to help me really more accurately critique and kind of analyze myself and almost like I'll be able to better judge myself. And what happened with me doing the inner child stuff is it was the opposite. I actually developed more compassion for myself because I was like, that's why I now do that. That's why I now, as human beings, we're far more textbook than what we often realize, right? And, I started inner child work with one book called, actually, this is my second book, but I'll share this one with the audience because I think it's where other people should start. It's called Facing Codependence by Pia Mellody. And it's just a great book. And everyone I've recommended, you just read it and you go, that's me, tick, that's me, tick, that's me, tick, that's me, tick. And you start to understand the root of where a lot of these patterns and behaviors are coming from. And it's always from childhood. And so doing the relationship work, doing the inner child work enabled me to rethink some of the behaviors and the beliefs that I've picked up along the way. One of the more tactical things that I needed to change about how I entered relationships is I just needed to go slower. Most relationships start, unfortunately, with our generation and younger generations, is there's an attraction, 2 people start sleeping together, you continue sleeping together, and a few months later, you're in a relationship. And it's like, that's the selection criteria. And it's a fucking terrible selection criteria because in that stage of anything, you're literally drugged because there's so many chemicals rushing through your brain and your body that, they call it the honeymoon period, that your ability to honestly critique and assess and determine, am I compatible with this person? What's the character of this person? Like below, the great sex and the kind of infatuation that I have, what's there below the surface, and is that compatible with where I'm going and the life that I want to lead? And so I needed to get better at that. And so for me, changing my relationship patterns was about doing the inner work for myself, working out what were my patterns in relationship, clearing some stuff from my childhood. And then that enabled me to firstly not need another relationship. The interesting thing with Panda and I is we were both resigned to, both of us would have been fine if we were never in another long-term relationship again. And so that was the space we were coming from. And so when we met one another, when we really connected, we were able to take it slowly in the beginning until we didn't. But in the beginning, we took it quite slowly because it was the first time we entered a relationship, both of us, consciously.
See, 2 full cups.
Yeah.
Right. I don't like statements like my better half. Right. Because I don't.
Even though it's true in my instance. No.
Speak for yourself. All right. But to me, there's no halves, right? There's no halves. Like it is two wholes coming together. And with that, what alchemy can be created, what overflow can be created that can spill on to our children going forward, that can only happen from doing the work.
Yeah.
Like doing the inner work. And this is something that we share in our men's groups across the globe, is that if you want your outer world to reflect who you know who you could be, you have to do the work in order for that to happen. Like it's got to start with yourself. And inner child work's one of the ways that we do a lot of that in the Mankind Project. And you know, sometimes those lessons come from the touch of a feather, and sometimes they're a kick to the balls. And it's heavy and it's hard, but to be able to acknowledge, like, little Brandon just created some survival mechanisms to get his needs met.
Right.
And those survival mechanisms no longer serve grown-up 31-year-old Brandon. I need to take his hands off the steering wheel, because grown-up Brandon's got to drive. And
100%. Beautifully put.
What's up, everyone? Brandon here, and I want to tell you, the busy professional, the dad that's juggling multiple tasks and duties, I want to tell you about something that has transformed my mornings, and it is Magic Mind. Now imagine having energy all day for work, dad duties, and perhaps some to spare in the evenings. A couple weeks ago, I was hitting that afternoon crash hard. The 2 p.m. blues were the soundtrack to my life, and then I got a hold of Magic Mind. Now, this is not just any supplement. It has been developed over 10 years by doctors and researchers with over 200 studies backing its ingredients. Now, this tiny little powerhouse of a shot uses premium nootropics and adaptogens, and thanks to the advanced nano encapsulation, it absorbs 5 to 10 times faster than any other pill. Now, since adding Magic Mind to my routine, I'm more focused, calm, and that energy sustains all day without the caffeine crash. It's safe, scientifically validated, and it helps me and my wife stay sharp and stress-free. So if you are ready to upgrade your day, head to magicmind.com and use the code UNCHAINED20, that's UNCHAINED20, at checkout to get 20% off your subscription. Now you can find those links in the show notes, that's magicmind.com, and at checkout, use the code UNCHAINED20. When you support our sponsors, you support our show. So I appreciate you as always, and trust me, you will thank me once you get a hold of this stuff. Yeah. So I want to ask you then. So you and Panda came into your dynamic conscious, more conscious than previous. What was it about her that won your heart? I mean, I know how amazing she is already.
Yeah.
But I want to hear your first person lens.
Oh, dude. I mean, Amanda is just the most amazing person I've ever met. So, I mean, let's start with that. But it's not just me, as you know. Everyone that meets Panda falls in love with her, and so she's to start with. Like, I consider myself so lucky. I was saying this to one of my good friends a couple of months ago. He lives in Perth, and we caught up. I said, "Mate, I got really lucky," and he sort of laughed. And I'm like, "No. I got really lucky because I found and was fortunate enough to form a connection with a really exceptional and unique human being." And so, I mean, that's where you've got to start. But then in terms of entering into and building a constructive relationship, that's also probably not enough, because you also need to have, which Panda and I do, values alignment, right? Meaning we want to live a similar life. We want to live a similar lifestyle. We've got a similar vision for our life. And so there's values alignment and there's vision alignment. The other thing with Panda is that she's somebody that, you know, I spoke about before, self-accountability. I've been sort of deep diving into psychology and therapy and a whole bunch of stuff for probably 30 years now, right? And I think that the most fundamental principle in personal development or therapy is cause and effect, meaning, do I believe I'm somebody that is at cause of what's going on inside of me and around me, or do I believe I'm at the effect of what's going on inside of me and around me? Meaning, do I have responsibility over it, or am I choosing to be a victim? And I think it's if every other principle I had ever learned was like an inverse pyramid and it all rested on one principle, what would that principle be? Cause and effect. I think it's there is no skill attainment without assuming you're at cause. There is no conflict resolution without assuming you're at cause. There's no progress in life without assuming you're at cause. There's no solving any problems without assuming you have to assume in every aspect of yourself and your life that you're a cause. Now, sometimes the cause will be about actually going even deeper, like into inner child work. Like, clearly I'm a cause of it. I don't know how or why. Therefore, I need to go in search of what is going on here that I can actually move and take responsibility for. And so I pride myself on living that way, and I pride myself on living that way for decades now. If I owe any success that I've generated to anything, it's that I just take radical ownership and radical responsibility for absolutely everything. It's always, what did I do or not do to cause this outcome? Hence, when I came out of my last relationship, that was the question I was asking myself. Panda's the same. And so to be in a relationship with somebody where, because no relationship's perfect. Every relationship has challenges. You need to have uncomfortable conversations. You need to negotiate. There are, there are periods where one is supporting and upholding the other. There is periods where the other is upholding and supporting the other, particularly with kids. I mean, that's where the real tests are going to come. And so to be in relationship with somebody where both of us, most of the time, are taking our own sense of accountability and responsibility rather than pointing the finger, I can't tell you how much easier that makes everything. And that's an ironic thing to consider, because why do we point the finger at somebody else? Because we think that's easier. We think it's easier to deflect from ourselves. But while it might be easier in the moment, it's so much more excruciatingly difficult, because you cannot change somebody else. And so in any dynamic, and I've had this in business partnerships as well, and even, with GMs and CEOs that I've employed in the past, the best relationships are when both people are coming in assuming almost complete responsibility, and then often going away and independently doing whatever work or exploration needs to occur in order to best kind of resolve that pattern that's going on for the individual. So that you can move forward with, certain issues resolved.
Yeah. I mean, this comes back to the consciousness piece for me when I hear you share this. And I'll share with you something you might get a kick out of this. So my wife and I created family values because we didn't necessarily have established family values growing up, loving households, but it wasn't like this is our family credo in a way.
Yeah.
And so we created 3. One was, you only have one body, so take care of it. We're quite a crunchy household here, quite non-toxic. Never dim your light. So never dim your light for anyone. Never make yourself smaller to make someone else feel better. Be big and bold and beautiful as you can be. And the last one was, if it's meant to be, it's up to me.
Yeah.
Which is
beautiful, man.
Which is about living above the line, ownership, accountability, responsibility, and not falling into that blame, excuses, denial. It's no, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. What role did I have to play in this regrettable incident? Because if it's impacting me, guess what? I'm a player on the field.
Exactly. And sometimes that's the thing. Sometimes the other person can own the behavior, but you at least need to own your reaction to the behavior, particularly if it triggered you. Because the behavior is there, but the trigger is theirs, but the trigger is yours.
Yes.
And so there's always self-accountability and self-responsibility. Even in instances where others would, find it much easier to point the finger. I love those 3 family values. I think imagine if every family lived according to those 3 values.
Well, they work for us, right? And it's got to work for the couple or the throuple or however many people are in the family. It's got to work for each family unit as well. I want to ask, so the two of you came into this relationship clearly with similar values and the same kind of attitude, right? You're both moving in the same direction. You have a shared vision. How have your values shifted since falling in love with your two girls, or if have they at all? What's been the transformation there?
They definitely have, in the same sense that I spoke about earlier, in that I've become more grounded, I've become clearer, my focus has sharpened, and I'm saying no to pretty much everything. So my personal three values is family, fitness, and finance. And by finance, I kind of mean mission, but finance nonetheless. And so, yeah, it's very rare. I mean, if I added a fourth F, it'd be fun. If I added a fifth one, it'd be footy, which is AFL back in Australia.
Up the Cats.
Yeah, well, I am a Carlton supporter, but let's not go there.
It's been fun. Yeah, this has been the Mankind Podcast. This has been
Good to chat to you, Brandon.
This has been an unremarkable guest. See you later.
Mate, we were looking good up until about 5 weeks ago. But anyway, conversation for another time.
Yeah, sure.
And so today I'm able to be, and I'm just far more relentless around being very clear about how I do and don't want to spend my time, and sharpening my values and my adherence to my values.
Yeah. Beautiful, man. Beautiful. I mean, there's just, not that I have like, I don't know. I'll give myself the credit. I'm a pretty good reader of people. And you at your core are the same person that I met years ago, 2016, 17, right? At your core, the same person, but it's almost like you've just sunk deeper into like who you really are. And that's 100%. That who you really are is now more on the outside. It's more on the front where people are seeing that. Even though it was always there, it's more sitting up front than Young CEO, Success Mag, Entourage, which it's all there. That's still important, right?
But
the family man is really, it's a good look, mate.
Totally, man. And what, I appreciate that. What's interesting there, Brandon, is I actually think that inside coming out thing that you're talking about right there started as I started doing inner child work and relationship work and more of the deep grounded work. You and I have always done high performance, personal development, psychology, right? I've been doing that like neuro-linguistic programming, cognitive behavioral therapy since I was like literally 6 or 7 because of the work that my parents did. And so I've always done that. And that's kind of always where I got my high performance side, from lack of a better word for it, from. However, a big kind of portion of personal development is like, don't look back. You can change everything right now. What happened in the past doesn't matter. And so that was kind of the script that I was always running. Like, don't worry about what happened in the past. But then when I started to do the inner child work and I started to see just how formative it really is for us as human beings, it enabled me to sink deeper into myself. And then that is probably the ground upon which I was able to attract somebody like Panda and develop a connection and the right foundations for a relationship slowly with someone like Panda. It started with the self-work. And I think that was probably step one of, the whole inside out journey, and then having a family deepens it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I can speak to that ad nauseum, but yeah, it's so true that Christine would not have come into my life if it wasn't for the just absolute pits experiences of breakups and heartbreak. And there's no way that my vibration would have caught hers in our paths crossing if it weren't for just the amount of crap I have had to eat and the good work that went into really getting to know the man in the mirror. And 166 episodes, it always comes back to the same principle every time. Do the work
on yourself.
Do the work on yourself. And you might go, well, what is the work on myself? It's the thing you are terrified to touch. It is the thing you've been putting off. It is that monster under the bed that you've been denying is there this whole time. And there's really no way around it, because that sucker's going to follow you everywhere. I thought selling my business, my house, my surfboards, my cars, and leaving Australia to go to South America to become drink jungle juice and backpack for 6 months. I'm like, yay, I'm free the second I left. Man, I drug all that stuff with me. All of it. I had to stay committed to doing the work. And that's the only way that what I have now becomes a reality, is doing that work.
Brennan, one kind of scenario pops to mind as we're talking about this, right? In a previous personal relationship of mine, I reached the point where I wanted to be committed in a relationship. And what that meant was I probably stayed in this particular relationship too long. And I remember we were living in Byron at the time, and I was speaking to another friend of mine. She lives in Austin, Texas, and the personal development and transformation journey she's been on over the last kind of 5-10 years was just extraordinary. And so she's a friend that I will often speak to in times where I'm struggling or wrestling with a particular scenario. Her name's Sarah. And I remember, I went for a walk along the hedge there in Byron Bay, and I was speaking to Sarah on the phone, and I was telling her about this relationship, and I didn't really know what to do, because I wanted to be committed, but I think at the same time I knew it wasn't the right relationship.
Yeah.
And she said, just go away from the relationship and do the work on yourself. And I remember when she said that, and this isn't that long ago, this is like 4 or 5 years ago, my head was like, no. I don't need to do the work. It's my partner that's the problem. I don't think I said that. At least I wouldn't have said it in so many words. But I definitely thought it. I thought, Sarah's just, misreading the situation or something. But my head was like, no. Like, my partner's the problem. And she said it she's like, Jack, I can't stress it, because she had come out of a marriage a few years prior to that and gone on this whole transformational journey herself. And she was like, you just got to go away and do the inner work, do the personal work on yourself. And it took me a little while to understand what she meant by that. It took me a little while to even start doing that. But then as I did and continued to, I started to see all of these unconscious patterns and unconscious things that I was doing that I shouldn't have, or wasn't doing that I should have. And it was like, man, she was 100% right. But I couldn't even fathom how she was correct when it was being said to me.
Yeah. The truth was there. I mean, your intuition, your gut kind of knew that it wasn't the right relationship, is what I'm gathering. Was there an element of fear of just moving away from that story of like, I want to be committed and see this thing through? Like, was there just an element of fear that you just like didn't want to go through what you knew you needed to and leaving that relationship?
100%. And because it also felt like a repeat of the same pattern, which it was.
Confirmation. Oh, I touched the stove again. I'm here again? What?
Exactly. And not having any conscious awareness around the part that I was playing in it. And so it's like, it's almost like toxic commitment, right? Now, I think that when commitment is, and I hope what I'm saying is obvious, commitment in a relationship is so important. And the way to think about it is this: it's the whole principle of I'm not leaving, right? You could show me your worst self. You could show me parts of yourself. You could show me the ugly sides of yourself. You can do, within reason, anything. I'm not leaving. And it's that commitment that I think is the macro agreement for all of the other agreements that fall within that. And so it's really important for Panda to understand just how committed I am to our relationship, as it is important for her to understand just how committed I am. Just how important it is for me to understand that she's committed to the relationship. And so the commitment piece is really important. I was just committed in the wrong vehicle.
Yeah. There you go.
Right. And so commitment's not the problem. It was my unconscious pattern of entering into incompatible relationships that was the problem. And I didn't even know that that was the problem at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Until it all became clear, right?
Exactly.
Until the smack between the eyes occurs and it's like, oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Look how I've set my life up. Well, and now look how you've set your life up now, mate. It's beautiful to witness the adventures that you're on. And yeah, like the commitment, that macro agreement, it gives me permission to take risks and speak my truth with my wife, knowing that she's not going to get in a car and take off and I'm never going to see her again. Like, even though in arguments with her, like there's this underlying fear that's really unrealistic that something like that's going to happen. Because I don't want to be at odds with this person that I'm madly in love with. And so something that Christine and I will do in arguments is, like in the heat of it, just be like, hey, I love you. I respect you. By the way, I'm not going anywhere.
Exactly.
Like we're bigger than this, as much as I like think you're a doo-doo poo face. Like
exactly.
just throw some levity in there and just kind of like, and I'm still pretty committed to my side of this argument. So I think we take 20. We take 20 and let's come back.
100%. Exactly. And here's the thing, man. One of the principles Pam and I have in our relationship is you don't threaten the relationship.
Yes.
You just don't threaten the relationship because it doesn't serve anyone or anything.
Yeah.
And so if we're ever having a discussion or a debate, there's never any sense of threat to the relationship because it's part of the values and the agreements for us. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Point to the ring here. I'm like, this thing's stuck. It ain't coming off. Yeah.
100%.
That's a good rule. That's a really good rule, especially if someone, I mean, we're not going to get into attachment styles, but if someone has that kind of insecure attachment, like that is one of the greatest fears, is that you're going to leave me. And maybe there's an unprocessed abandonment story going on, which is very, very triggering to the individual too. So yeah, conscious to know, like, well, we've had a lot of boundaries, people that are experts in boundaries and relationships, communicate the non-negotiables, communicate the no-go zones. Like, I'm going to make this aware to you, this truth, this fear, this story aware to you, so that if you ever use it, you are consciously hurting me. Like,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, like this is my boundary here. So
yeah.
Well, mate, the adventure continues for the three of you and this beautiful family that you've built, and it was kind of serendipitous for me to, Bindy's only just a bit older than Ariella. And so it's been kind of cool to watch like their development in lockstep just through social media, whatever limited connection there is there. But it's like, definitely. I can totally just feel through the camera, like what you guys are experiencing and going through. And, I know it's not always a highlight reel. It gets pretty brutal at times. So, mate, what excites you most about the journey going forward as a father, as a husband, as a family man?
Dude, it's that whole values alignment thing. For the first time ever, I'm in a relationship where there's absolute values alignment and absolute vision alignment. And so Pandra and I are really both committed to creating a certain life and a certain lifestyle that's based in family, business and mission, travel, impact. And so it's been really interesting for me experiencing the force multiplier effect that has when you get two people who are like that on the same journey, both playing similar and different roles for one another. And so what's exciting is the life that we're creating together. And that's a really fortunate and privileged thing to be able to sit here and say. And so I definitely don't say that lightly. But I think when you start building a life with the person that you share a vision and share values with, that's exciting in and of itself.
I've never heard it explained as the force multiplier, and it makes complete sense. It's like hook in, hang on, like this train's moving and it doesn't slow down at any point, because I can't believe the speed and rate at which things happen as opposed to when I was single.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, and so that's awesome. And so not only is everything strengthened and it's a bit of an accelerant, but it's also more enjoyable because you're doing it with someone. I was never someone that did life with anyone else. Like I had partners, but I was always kind of on my own mission, if you like. Whereas, yeah, it's as if that. Well, it's not as if we are doing it together now, and so it's super cool.
beautiful, mate. Well, Jack, it's been a pleasure to kind of come full circle. It's been about 8 years since we've been in each other's space, and to see, just how much it just brings me so much joy to see what you and Panda and Ariel are creating together. So, man, it's just been great to spend this time with you. How can our listeners find out more about you and what you got going on right now?
Best way, man, is just Instagram. So I'm just Jack Delosa on Instagram, JackDelosa. And for any business owners or people looking to get into business, check us out at the-entourage.com. You can sort of join our movement of 1 million business owners absolutely free, and that can help you start and build successful businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure to have links for all of those in the show notes. And for those of you that are entrepreneurial or business minded, check it out. I know we didn't get into that stuff today, but there are more podcast interviews with you on them, talking business, that people can just dive into. And yeah, so today, that was not what we were going to do today. Well, mate, thank you again for joining us. This has just been an absolute treat. But of course, the most thanks goes to you, the listeners, who join us each and every week as we break the molds of modern manhood to prove there's more than one way to be a man. What do you say, Jack? Have we done that today?
Yeah, man. I think the work that you're doing is so important, and you're clearly the embodiment of the message, and so that's equally important. So I honor you for that, man.
Thank you, mate. Thank you, mate. Well, it's what we do. Lots of love. We'll see you next week. This has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. We have been your hosts, Boyson Hodgson and myself, Brandon Clift, and we want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. If you want to find out more about today's guests and support them in their mission, you can find links to them in the show notes. Now, if you have found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, we are always grateful for a rating and review of the show on iTunes. Now, above all else, we've got to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you have made it possible for us to let men all over the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. And if something in this episode has touched you, then perhaps it is the call to action to get involved in men's work. With live trainings happening constantly and in-person trainings happening all over the world, the Mankind Project definitely has something for you. Now, if you've enjoyed the music in this episode and all of our episodes, be sure to check out Jim Donovan and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. And lastly, just know, what it means to me to be a man is completely different than what it means for you. That is the beauty of this journey. So if you are looking for guidance, support, and community as you begin to unpack and dive deeper into your men's work journey, then you know where to find us. Same place, same time, next week. Lots of love. We'll see you then.
Hey, it's Boyson here with the Mankind Podcast. We are closing in on 100 5-star reviews of this podcast, and we have a goal. Brandon and I want to get to 250 5-star reviews. So help us out, will you? Please go to the Mankind Podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a review. Thank you.